Hello everyone, my name is St. Jimmy. Wow, this is actually really good, and it feels really great that it is. Kind of weirdly enough, we haven't gotten a traditionally structured Star Trek show in a really long time. The shows in the modern era thus far have usually been more concerned with series-wide storylines than the more episodic storytelling that the franchise is known for. Or they spin off in an entirely different genre than Star Trek was originally. The closest we've gotten to a traditional Star Trek show is the Orville, which I do quite like, but it's also kind of a comedy, and also technically not even a Star Trek show. So yeah, even though I haven't been as disappointed with modern Star Trek as others have been, this is still really quite refreshing. So what we have here is what Star Trek historically has been. An episodic series with little to no series arc, apart from character arcs and storylines that span throughout the season. To have this kind of show work, you require two aspects of the show to be really quite great. That being the quality of the character writing and the quality of individual episodes. Both of those things here are really properly on point. Oh, and before I continue, this review will attempt to be spoiler free. There isn't really a series arc to spoil, but some things do happen, and as always I might imply that something happens without intending to, so be warned. I'll start with characters. There isn't one I don't like. A lot of these characters are ones that we've seen before. I mean, Spock is literally a main character, so yeah. But even so, the way the series writes the pre-existing well-developed characters and develops the less developed characters is really great. I have to commend the interactions between these characters as well. For example, seeing a much more inexperienced version of Uhura was a lot of fun, especially given that inexperience led to some great interactions between her and some more experienced members of the crew, especially with Hammer and Spock. I thought La'an Union Singh was a well-needed injection of more intense high energy into the show, and the actor's portrayal of anger and grief was exemplary. Spock is great as always. At this point, Star Trek has mastered Vulcan characters and the issues they experience in a human ship, but the actor does a great job nonetheless. I also really like Dr. Mbenga. From what I've seen, he's definitely the most divisive character in the show. I think because of the way he speaks is quite whispery, and the actor's performance of the character is quite subdued in general. But I actually believe that these things are strengths. I felt the more subdued performance gave the character more impact when he actually did show emotion, and I believe the actor portrayed a character who doesn't show much emotion showing emotion really well. This subdued performance also contrasts well with other characters who do show a lot of emotion. Really helps the show's diversity of character personalities. Two of the more minor characters here are Ortegas and Hemmer. I didn't mind Ortegas. Thus far she hasn't gotten a whole lot of character development or exposition, so there's not much to say about her. I'll definitely be interested to see more development from her in the future. However, I really did love Hemmer. If there's any character who I wish got a whole episode of his own, it's this guy. But my absolute favourite character is, of course, Captain Pike. It's just such a great performance as a Star Trek captain. Wise, caring, moral, and authoritative, as all captains should be. I also loved his character arc of confronting his own mortality. A very unique character arc that I'm not sure we've seen so far in Star Trek. At least not in this way. Honestly, even after one season, top 5 Star Trek captains. Easy. The only character who I didn't really like was the first officer, Una Chin Riley. She's not bad at all, I just didn't feel like the character had much to offer to the wider dynamic of the crew, even after she got an episode where she was the protagonist in Ghosts of Illyria. But I'll be very interested to see where this character goes in the following seasons of the show. Alright, on to individual episodes, and there wasn't an episode here that I didn't like, which is really surprising. I thought all were at worst good. But I'll highlight 3 individual episodes here that I thought were something special. The first is actually the lowest rated episode on IMDb, The Elysian Kingdom. This episode follows Dr. Mbenga as the protagonist, which, as I said earlier, could be the beginning of problems for some. But for me, as always, he actually gives a great performance. His best of the series in my opinion. This episode is very wacky. It's got an extremely light-hearted tone until the very end, which in my opinion is also its greatest strength. It switches very effectively from a wacky fairy tale to a tearjerker very quickly. The next episode I'll highlight is the finale and highest rated episode of the series, Quality of Mercy. God, this episode is just wonderful, a perfect end to the series and Pike's story and character arc. And, slight spoiler, a brilliantly executed time travel episode in the vein of classic Star Trek time travel. I'm so glad the series ended with a bang to ensure that this series was truly great. But my favourite episode was the pilot and first episode of the series. Not only was this a fantastic introduction to the show at large, it was a wonderful introduction to the Star Trek franchise in general. It takes the hope for a better future that Star Trek was created to capture and distills it into an hour-long episode, conveying it perfectly. To be melodramatic, this episode is the most pure Star Trek thing that we have gotten in decades. And given the events that are happening in the world right now, I'm so happy this episode came out when it did. The last thing I'll commend is the show's visual design. The visuals have always been wonderful in modern Star Trek, definitely its best aspect, and it's wonderful to see these visuals in a more traditional iteration of the show. Honestly, a dream come true. I hope the show going forward uses its high visual fidelity to tell stories which Star Trek previously couldn't, which the other shows in modern Trek sort of have already been doing, to be fair, just to varying degrees of success. I think this season has laid the perfect groundwork for the show to do something truly special with its visuals. And to be honest, my biggest complaint for this series, and it's honestly barely even a complaint, is that it's not groundbreaking in any way. It's retreading the old steps of the original series and the next generation. Now, don't get me wrong, that's obviously the intention, and I would prefer them to play it safe for season 1 to lay a good groundwork for further expansion later seasons, than them take a risk early and ruin the whole show. And sure, this show isn't as good as TNG or DS9 at their heights, but you know what? Season 1 of TNG and DS9 were nowhere near as good as those shows at their heights. But you know what is better than Season 1 of those shows? Season 1 of Strange New Worlds. If that's not a wonderful sign, I don't know what is. To summarize, if you like modern Trek, you'll like this show. If you haven't liked modern Star Trek so far, this show is much more similar to the Star Trek you've enjoyed so much. If you don't enjoy this show, I'm not sure you'll ever be happy with a new Star Trek show. If you've never seen Star Trek because the visuals from the 90s and 60s are incredibly dated, because let's be honest, they absolutely are, you should give the show a chance. It's the perfect introduction to the franchise and really emphasizes what makes Star Trek such a wonderful world and franchise. So, my rating for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1 is 9 out of 10. It is truly special. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, be sure to like and subscribe and whatever YouTubers usually say, I don't know. I've probably been much less energetic in this video than I normally have been. That's because I'm getting over COVID. I've had COVID. It was not fun, and yeah, I'm just getting back into making videos now. I would have liked to have made more videos, but I've been bedridden. So yeah, we'll start seeing more videos out in the near future, and yeah, goodbye everyone. Okay, this is a pretty big spoiler, but the new guy who plays Captain Kirk, it just looks nothing like him at all. And I find it really funny.